at a company, and we'd have a challenge. If we could hack into each other's systems, like kind of like capture the flag, we would the reward would be $200. So I kept getting into his system at work, but he could never get into mine, and he got angry. And then one time, and then it ended up becoming a situation where he actually went to I did some pranks because we had a little falling out over this, and he actually went to the FBI and told them all the hacking we were doing in Digital Equipment Corporation, because at that time we were copying the VMS source code. So here's a guy that wasn't even under investigation or anything at that point, and because he was angry with me, went to the federal authorities and became an informant. But because he didn't get a lawyer or discuss this with an attorney, what had happened is he actually ended up getting himself convicted of a felony. Yeah, which was really stupid. He was just so angry, he ended up, now he has a felony on his record. So then later on, then I got involved with another guy, and he was in the fugitive game. Probably for those that have read the book, there's a guy named Louis DePayne. He and I were hacking partners for over 20 years. And in the fugitive game, because John Littman got input from him and not really the authorities, when they went and searched his apartment, in the book it's portrayed as he was one up on the FBI, that he was not being cooperative at all, and he was being antagonistic, and that he knew all about their operation, which he knew a lot about their operation, but in the book it appeared he was like non-cooperative and a smartass to the government. But in reality, when I got my discovery, what they call FBI 302s, this is when somebody interviews with an FBI agent, they fill out these FBI 302 forms. When I got that in my pretrial discovery, after 4 years, by the way, I found out that really wasn't the case. That was that as soon as they got into, searched his apartment, he immediately offered cooperation if the government could provide him protection, like I was going to do something. But, so, in all my cases, except for the last one, Satomo Shimomura, they all involved informants. And in one case, it was a guy that had a vendetta against me. The second case was a guy who was under investigation with me. Myself, when I was sitting in custody, there was the Free Kevin movement. I was offered to cooperate. Because what happens is how the government wants to work the cases is they want somebody to be able to testify against the other. And they want to divide and conquer both, all the parties in a conspiracy. But at the time, I refused to cooperate because I felt it was against my ethic and moral fiber to reduce my sentence to hand it off to somebody else. I just felt really uncomfortable. So I sat in prison much longer than I normally would if I would have had to cooperate, but I feel good today knowing that I didn't hurt somebody else. I didn't try to reduce my sentence to harm another individual. And it even got to the point where the government said, okay, you don't have to cooperate against somebody else, but we want to debrief you. And I even refused to allow the government to debrief me. So what ended up happening is I actually served out like the full sentence. I didn't get any points for acceptance or responsibility or anything of that sort. But what's also interesting, there's a way to detect informants in the federal system. There's a computer system called PACER, Public Access Court Electronic Records. And this allows you to look up dockets, the docket reports of people that have been charged with federal crimes. Also civil, you have bankruptcy there. So in knowing how the system works, because I was inside the system for quite some time, I could look at a docket and kind of get a good sense of whether that person is cooperating against another individual. And let's look up an example. I'm not saying this particular person's an informant, but it's highly suspicious, some of the circumstances in their docket. So let's take a quick look. Can you bring it up on the projector? Bring up my,
which session is it here?
It's under,
is this somebody who's in prison now?
No.
Okay. I don't want someone getting shanked because of something we say.
Where is it? Wait, right here. All right. So here's a docket report off Pacer, and anybody could sign up for Pacer and analyze these things. So I just picked just a random guy. This guy's named Gregory D. Evans. Okay. And let's analyze the docket here.
What does that mean, terminated?
That means the case, it doesn't mean he's terminated, it means the case was
I don't know this.
finished.
If all our problems were that easy.
So this is the case with the Central District of California. Now, let's look at some suspicious things you could see in a docket. Well, first of all, we see that this individual was sentenced to 24 months on the right-hand side under the disposition. But let's go down. Now, in the news media reports, I actually Googled this guy, and this guy actually had a co-defendant. What's suspicious is the co-defendant's not on the same docket. In a normal federal case, when they prosecute an individual, they have to try them together if they're part of the same conspiracy. So if they're not on the same docket, that means there's something strange is going on. But let's look further, because that's not conclusive by itself. So if we looked at he was charged with an information, and these are numbered, and I'll go through the numbers. 1, he was charged with an information. Then he was indicted on number 4. Okay, and he was assigned to this judge named Dick Trevisan. Okay, in number 8, the government requested detention. What that means is they want to hold this person without bail. Okay, because they're either a flight risk or a danger to the community. So if we go down a bit further, in number 9, he immediately decided to plead guilty. That means there's no presumption of evidence that he is actually guilty of some of the charges in the indictment or the information. So then we go down a little further, and if you look at number 17, there's a notice of filing under seal by his attorney, meaning that this is not for public consumption, and and the government could obviously see it, but it's a notice filing under seal. And then immediately after this under seal filing, okay, and there's several of them, in number 28, all of a sudden he's getting bail. They're allowing him to bond out of prison. Now, that doesn't make sense. If you haven't been found guilty by a trial or pled guilty, right, the government didn't want him out. They basically wanted to detain him. Now the guy pleads guilty. There's several under seal filings, and all of a sudden he's getting bail. I mean, what do you think? No, it's not conclusive. So there's the securities, there's the property he's putting up, and now, if you look at 33 down this whole list, it's all in-camera under sealing filings by the defense, right? So usually I'm not sure in this particular guy's case, but in a lot of cases, it's when the attorney, they're talking about the cooperation that person is doing with the government. So another thing to look for is long delays after pleading guilty or pleading guilty. Before that in sentencing. If there was several months in between, it's usually normally 90 days. Because in a federal criminal case, they have to do, the U.S. Probation Office has to do what they call a pre-sentence report. In the pre-sentence report, the probation department recommends a sentence. That's a 90-day period. But when it goes on for months, what that means, well, it could likely mean, look at all these under seal filings. What that means is there's a reason why there's a delay between adjudication of guilt and sentencing, and that usually indicates that that person may be cooperating against another defendant or more than one defendant. So it's kind of interesting because in my personal case, I don't know if you know this, there is a guy named Justin Tanner Peterson who went under the name of Agent Steele. And what this guy was doing is he was actually committing credit card frauds. And he was involved in the Kevin Poulsen case. He ran off to Texas. He got busted again for fraud. As soon as he ended up in jail, he calls Pacific Bell and the FBI in Los Angeles and offers to become an informant against the hacker community. And his job was to get the bust or to acquire evidence against as many people as he possibly can. And I became one of the large targets. After he was able to help the government get Kevin Poulsen's computer in the prosecution against Kevin Poulsen, his next target was me. So if you looked at his docket, on Pacer, it essentially has the same